All right, and we're back with another episode of Pop Culture Cosmos. We're back right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos once again. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here, and I'll tell you what, we had we've had actually a few deaths in the movie industry as of late, but one that I know has hit really hard with one of our frequent guests is the late Joel Schumacher, who you might know. Well, who you might know as one of the driving forces behind Batman and Robin, also as well the Lost Boys, so many other pictures. I know he is more credited with some of the stuff that he produced because he's been a producer on dozens and dozens of major hit movies over the years. And here today to talk about his passing and his mark on the movie industry is a good friend of ours, stopping by once again. It's Noe and Fein of Honeyqueen. You got to go ahead and check out all the great stuff that they're doing today at Honeyqueen on Facebook. Noah, I know it's not great news that you hear, but Joel Schumacher, I mean, action. When I think of Joel Schumacher, I think of action personified as far as the movies he was part of.
Yeah, the first movie that I saw was Lost Boys, the one he directed, and then years later I had seen Falling Down, followed by The Client, and then I found out he was going to be directing Batman Forever, and 2 years later he would direct Batman and Robin. And my understanding was that if he was taking over after seeing Falling Down, and he said that he wanted to make a Batman year one, and I saw Falling Down, and I've seen The Client, and I figured, okay, well, we're in good hands. Even with Lost Boys, I figured, if Burton is out because of creative differences, and all the stuff in Batman Returns, you really couldn't put on a Happy Meal, but that was the problem because it was all about Happy Meal toys. So what we got was really a hybrid of Batman the Animated Series meets Batman 66, and Schumacher wanted to make one more film, Batman Triumphant, which never happened. I've heard a lot of things about that, of how many characters they were going to shove in, and it just wouldn't have worked. But if I had to pick one Schumacher film that is very hard to watch, but very underrated, it's Falling Down. And I know that Falling Down, you had a lot of these angry white guy movies in the 70s and 80s, and they brought it back in the 90s. But I really wasn't too aware of those movies at the time. I wasn't watching them. So when I watched Falling Down, I thought it was original and different, and in a way it kind of was. But it's a very hard pill to swallow, and it's a shame because I could have seen Douglas as Commissioner Gordon in Batman Forever or Batman and Robin. I could have even seen him as Two-Face. But I know that Schumacher had a relationship with Tommy Lee Jones, and that's why he was Two-Face in the movie. It's, you know, I guess when you have a franchise and you have ideas, but one person is telling you, this is what we want you to do, it's two different animals trying to pull each other, and it never become his film. And people went after Joe Schumacher over it, including Bruce Timm from the animated series that bashed him in an episode of Batman the animated series in the fourth season. There was that episode Legends of the Dark Knight, and there's this effeminate kid named Joel, and he's standing underneath a store that says Shoemaker. So they were bashing him. But and I couldn't figure out, like, I didn't put two and two together. I was kind of like, you know what? It takes a village, and Joel, I guess, just wanted to work. And I have watched Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, but Batman and Robin, I gotta ask you, do you have a favorite Schumacher film?
For me, it would be either Falling Down. It wouldn't be one of the Batmans. I'm going to be honest
Yeah.
with you. I mean, those are two of the lower points of the Batman sagas, and obviously was one of the driving forces behind the reboot of the Batman series that we saw from Christopher Nolan. I would probably say of them, Falling Down to me is a very emotional film. I think that's a very good one. Phone Booth has been quite forgotten over the years, but still is a kind of like a chilling movie in and of itself. And I'd probably say from him, the number one movie would be Falling Down. I think that's either that or A Time to Kill. I mean, because that's also a very good movie as well. I think A Time to Kill. I know we talked about that. It's a part of our top 100-ish movie countdown. I think it was you and I that talked about it as far as A Time to Kill. Either that or Josh, maybe. It was.
Yeah, Josh, I don't remember talking
Yeah,
about that one. I
but
never
it has been a recent entry on our top 100-ish movie countdown. A Time to Kill showcases a lot of great talent, and I think that's an underrated movie of his as well.
Yeah, I think that A Time to Kill, that's the one with James Woods and Samuel Jackson and Matthew McConaughey.
That is correct, and also, of course, Sandra Bullock leading the charge.
Right, that's the one where I remember that's a trailer where Samuel Jackson says, the guy deserves to die and he belongs in hell. I think that's one of the lines.
Yes, Sandra Bullock had reached that superstar status that I think I alluded to when we were talking about in the top 100-ish movie countdown. But Samuel L. Jackson was just starting to hit some really high notes, and so was Matthew McConaughey, as far as bringing those two into an upper level of stardom that they would start to see grow over the next few years.
Well, I'm going to talk again about The Client because that's another film. Because in the 90s, you had all these movies about corrupt lawyers or lawyers that were trying to make names for themselves. In the 90s, it was an interesting time to be a lawyer. You had, like I said, you had all these John Grisham books that were being adapted into movies. And the Client was one of those Joel Schumacher films that I'm glad got an adaptation. I didn't read the novel, but it did have a great cast. You had the late Brad Renfro, you had Susan Sarandon, and you had Tommy Lee Jones. If you don't remember this movie, it's pretty much where Brad Renfro is a teenager and he is playing with his brother. They're out in the woods because they live in a trailer park, and unfortunately, they come across a lawyer who I think it's a lawyer. It's definitely somebody who, or a senator. It's definitely somebody. I can't remember. It's been decades since I've read the book and seen the movie. I'd say the last time was probably 1996. But Renfro comes across a guy who is drunk and he wants to kill himself because the mob is after him, and Renfro wants to hire a lawyer, and nobody wants to listen to him because he's a kid. So somehow Sandra Bullock. You have Damn It Janet. You have Susan Sarandon, who's willing to take the case. And it's not a bad film. It's definitely one of the more underrated. I think it's under 2 hours because that's what 1990 movies were like back then, before they're like these 3-hour epics. It's Tommy Lee Jones. He really doesn't have much of a role in it. He's just the prosecutor. But definitely one of those films that it came out in 1994. Again, I haven't seen this in 1996, but definitely check that one out. Lost Boys as well. I think the last time I watched that was back in 1989. I'm not a huge fan of vampire films, and I believe that one came out in 87. I did not want to see it in theaters because vampires really don't do anything for me. They're immune to sunlight and blah, blah, blah. But it was a different take on the genre for its time. It's got a great climax, a great ending. So, yeah, I mean, Schumacher definitely wasn't a hack. I know he was a window dresser before he made his way into Hollywood as a director, but he definitely didn't make a lot of turkeys. I mean, again, was it really his fault, or was the studio's fault that because they were just more concerned about making a profit?
Well, I'll tell you what, he does have a history of some great movies that he's been a part of, that he's either directed, produced, or written. And like I said before, he's got a lot of great stuff when it concerns action and intense dramas. So if you want to check out the work of Joel Schumacher, I hope you do. There's several great movies on his list of films. Check out his Wikipedia or IMDb page as soon as you can. And check out some of the great stuff from the 90s and 80s that he did and that he was a part of. And I hope you will. Noah, I cannot thank you enough for stopping by to share some great thoughts on Joel Schumacher. But before we head on out, this part of our conversation is going to be put on to Pop Culture Cosmos 200. And I wanted to go ahead and just publicly thank you so much for everything that you've contributed to us over the years. It's been years now. Sorry. I wanted to go ahead and let you in on that one. But 200 episodes of the Pop Culture Cosmos, my friend. And I wanted to let you know that we are just so thankful that you're a part of it. Just so thankful that you've been able to give us that contribution and time. And hopeful that we can go ahead and have many more contributions from you going forward.
Oh, I have a feeling you will. And definitely congratulations on episode 200. Whenever I reboot again, I'll probably be back to episode 1, but I don't know how many episodes I have. But I mean, I remember a few years ago when I asked you to guest on a couple of things, which are great. So we always try to help each other out in this field. But again, this was a really bizarre week, I think, in more ways than one. I do kind of hope, though, that the one last thing with Shumacher regarding Batman, really quick. When Batman and Robin came out, I didn't get to see it entirely in theaters because there was a sprocket fire, so it was cut short, and we had a choice to either wait an hour to have them fix the problem, or I got free tickets to go see Austin Powers, which I did. I figured I'd wait for Batman and Robin to come out on video. Well, this is around the time the DVDs were popping their ugly heads, so I went to rent it, and apparently, can't explain it, halfway through, disc died. Then it ended up on TNT, and all of a sudden there was a blackout. So the point is, it took me years to finally see Batman and Robin. Like every time I wanted to watch Batman and Robin, something happened, which was interesting. And it was always during this halfway mark with more ice puns than usual. But now that I finally have the Blu-ray and it works, and I've watched the documentaries, yeah, you could tell that Schumacher's lying through his teeth about how much he enjoyed making these movies, but reality is it was a studio. So if you really want to remember his career, for me, I'm going to go with a tie between The Client and Falling Down. They're hard films to watch, but yeah, at least I don't think there's too much studio interference.
Well, there you have it. There's the opinions of Noe and Fein from Hunniqueen. You got to be seeing what he's doing today at Hunniqueen on Facebook. Just type it in HUNNICWEEN or the Hunnick Outcast. You can check that out as well. My friend, it's been great having you on the PCC Multiverse, and of course, also great having you on our 200th episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. It's been great having you a part of this whole thing that we call right here the Pop Culture Cosmos.